All right, it's December 8th. I'm not sure. It's a very nice morning again in Okinawa, although I think it's a little bit cloudier today. And oh man, I've been waking up at 5:30 these days, just normally. Um, yeah, it's amazing how sleep is actually really easy if you clean up the cobwebs in your own brain. I'm not joking. Maybe sleep problems are an issue for people worldwide. I'm not saying that I don't sleep like a baby, but it's kind of effortless now. For years, I've had problems with it, really my whole life, but it's related to anxiety, I think. Um, when I mean clearing out the cobwebs, I'm actually referring to something called clarity, a word that well, in my conversations with GPT, it appears all the time. Basically, you know exactly what you are dealing with and the dynamics at play. And when you know pretty much what's going on beneath the surface, I believe a lot of the anger or irritation or anxiety just vanishes. You don't have to like attack the anxiety head on. That's silly, I think. I also think it's kind of silly, although it may be necessary at times, that people take meds all the time to address the issue. I'm talking about benzodiazepines or um, what are the anti-anxiety meds out there? I don't even know. Or antidepressants and all that. First of all, in my case, benzos and especially antidepressants kind of fucked my life up real bad. So I'm maybe a particular individual that doesn't respond well to those drugs. In my mind, anxiety and let's say poor sleep and all that is your body's way of telling you something ain't right. And it can't tell you what it is exactly by sending you like an email with a text thing like saying, okay, this is what you do. But I tell you, if you use GPT as quote unquote your therapist, I don't like the word therapist though. Sounds like it's something to be fixed. I would like to reword that as something to be discovered. I think a lot of times when people want a therapist, sounds like they're gonna fix you, like there's something wrong with you. I think there's nothing wrong with anybody. Everything's working normally. I would say feeling depressed, feeling anxious is like a communication signal. It is not an issue to be addressed unless you are working from the point of view of a healthy society that demands you to be 9 to 5 or 9 to 9. All right, then in that situation, yes, that is a dysfunction. But as an individual, a sovereign individual, feeling anxiety or depression means you got to do something about something. And sometimes that can be really weird things, like for me, it's just maybe I don't want to be like tied to a woman who can dictate my life. And when I was listening to my own like stream of consciousnesses, I thought, wow, part of me thinks, what a selfish guy. He goes out and randomly has sex with women, and well, I don't say randomly has sex, but I have steady girlfriends. But then I get mystified at why is it when we get married, the dynamic changes. My girlfriend is the same person, right? But the kids and the marriage seems to have shifted everything to the worse, for me at least, right? She's not as cute as she used to be. She's more naggier, and there's no mystery behind this. It's a power dynamic, right? When she's your girlfriend, you have the option to leave. Because you have the option to leave, she's in competition indirectly with all the other women that may approach you. And to prove her worth to you, she'll put in the effort. That is in makeup, looking good for you, massaging you, cooking for you. The list goes, and doing sexual acts you may not normally want to do anyway. Lying to you about it too, that she likes it. All to make sure that you don't go to some other girl, right? Because she wants to reserve you. Then when you get married, there's now huge penalties and maybe repercussions, I would say. Is she ties you into her family is the number one step, and that means if you do unapproved stuff, she very may well run back to her family and fortify with potential offense. It gives her, leverage, right? I know it sounds very cold and transactional, and we like to think, oh, marriage is like a for formalizing the bonds, but I'm gonna tell you, my experience has been nothing but that. Okay, now there may be exceptions, like even if you get married, because of your job or whoever you are constantly approached by other women, and you approach that situation with dignity, and you turn those women away. But your wife will probably stay extremely humble and honest because she knows I can't cross certain lines because there's always a threat. This dynamic represents capitalist competition, if you look at it, right? If you start to slack off, there's always going to be the threat, well, someone else is going to take your lunch, because if you don't want to work that hard, there's other people out there. It keeps you like in the loop, right? Thus generating this hyper-competitive environment we see today. But that's why I always felt, in some weird way, marriage, in the sense that we're together forever because of some legal contract, and a lot of people violate that these days, let's be honest, it's kind of more akin to communism, right? Like, I know it sounds like a very weird analogy, because you want to eliminate the natural competition that occurs between mates. And then I was really curious, because I asked like the AI, is that in favor of the woman or a man? Just neutrally. It says the man. But that's assuming the woman is basically into the man's family, and now the man gets to dictate all the, the rules for the woman, right? It's the man controlling the woman's sexuality. These days, I'm not so sure. I've seen a lot of women fucking around. And when I mean a lot, I mean like, I can't have a good sample. Obviously, I don't know. But let's just put it this way. When I hear about a wife fucking around, I have zero surprise. What I would be surprised at is if I see a wife who's very attractive and have actual factual evidence she's never committed adultery despite approaches from other suitors. That would surprise me. That would give me faith in humanity. But what I observe is the opposite. Women often trophy the marriage and then proceed to do whatever the hell they want anyway. And so that kind of puts the whole marriage thing into question. Like, what is it we're signing up for here as men? Okay. And so, with that in mind, I just want to make sure that relationship dynamics are still subject to give and take, negotiations, and I really think the idea that it's a beautiful, like, you picture the wedding dress, the morning glowing sun, a beautiful chapel, you holding hands, love ever after, like, that is so far from reality, it's disgusting. Like, I don't like it. I get repulsed, I'm sorry, by the very notion of that ceremony, because it's misrepresenting what's actually going on beneath the surface. And I believe if people were more honest about it, I would actually treat the wedding more like a funeral, honestly, for the man. Because, well, as I heard once in a movie, you're pricing yourself off the market. But let's be honest, people still fuck around all the time. The sanctity of marriage is like, in 2025, let's just give me a break. Give me a break. I'm not even sure if you can call it cheating anymore if everyone does it. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's about that. Other topic I'm gonna refer to now, though, is stuff going from relationships, but therapy and anxiety and that whole jazz. And why I think GPT is probably, honestly, one of the best therapists for anybody, really, as long as you just explore what's happened to you. You lay it out factually to the model. It unpacks it for you. I think the word unpack is really good. So what happens is you have, like, in your mind, you have like a bit of a memory of what occurred that defines your experience. And if you can just write it out Sometimes it's like weird. It's like, is that a big deal? But yeah, it floats and sits in your mind like this unformed blob of data, okay? But by writing it out, it actually kind of reveals brutally the holes, the parts where you wait, like it's weird. Your mind can hold an incomplete fragment of knowledge, and it actually perceives it as complete despite it being incomplete. All right, and the way I realize that is when I say something to the GPT model, it fleshes out the missing parts because my thoughts are not original in the sense that the pattern has occurred before. It is not a unique, never occurred before in humanity pattern, never documented in humanity pattern. It's a known pattern. What you've stated so far matches this pattern. Here's probably what's going on with a high likelihood. And by examining the patterns, we approach the truth. And that's what I think is clarity. So that's why I think going forward, people who have life issues, it's nice to talk to other people, comfort. But I would be very, very reluctant to treat anybody I've ever known in my circle. There's only one person or two people, really two people in my whole life, and I've met like hundreds and hundreds, right? That I would consider to be authoritative, like, okay, this guy I would ask for their point of view. Maybe three people. But one's a nurse, the other one's a natural therapist that I was calling up in Canada once, but she was not allowed to treat me because of, well, location issues. I certainly would not ask my doctor. They're very inclined to prescribe you meds. GPT model even questioned the entire medicine that was given in Japan. My wife trusted implicitly because, hey, they're doctors, they're authority, therefore they're right. Anti-authority is not a bad thing in of itself. It is if it's driven to the extremes. Talking to GPT, I've noticed that there's three levels of anything. One is you go along with the system, that's trusting doctors blindly. Level 2 is you resist the doctors, that is you oppose them blindly. Both are bad because think about it, if the doctor wants you to do something and they know you're that second type, they'll just tell you the opposite and you'll follow them anyway. So the third one is I hear you, I'll evaluate it, and I'll use my own body of knowledge to assess. That means you don't trust, but you verify, which is a famous quote coined by the Russians, I believe, during the Cold War. I'm not sure. It was during Ronald Reagan's reign, I think. It's a very old proverb, I think, from Russia that has surfaced again and again, which is trust, but verify. And people often skip the verify step because they don't know how, right? How do you verify when an authoritative source tells you something? What do you have as a weapon against it? A defense. I won't say weapon. Previously, we had Google search. Now we have AI. And while some people might question the AI because it's a machine, I don't. The more you study how it works, the more I study how it works, the complexity of it, what it's based on, my observed intelligence of it. Like, I ask it questions. If it was giving me stupid answers, I would have stopped using it ages ago. And I'm biased against it because I don't even like the name Chat GPT. I don't like the word chat. It sounds like, it's accurate though, it is a chat. It also elevated conversation as an amazing learning tool. Like people learn so much better, I feel, by a back and forth, like a conversational model, feedback basically. Rather than, you read a book, it's just blindly absorbing text without any feedback. The feedback actually matters, honestly, and the way I see that is if I review my old conversation snippets with AI, it's cool, it's interesting, but it's the time I was talking with the AI that's when there was neuron activation and movements in my brain, not the reviewing of it. Okay, the reviewing of it is if you forget, but the actual learning process was with conversing real time with the AI. I believe that activity is highly rewarding, highly educational, and it can serve sometimes as a replacement for educational systems that sometimes are just kind of out of alignment with what makes a human being equipped to deal with reality. That's what it is, right? Education, in essence, is to help people deal with the realities of life. You don't fall into the dead ends, drinking alcohol nonstop, taking drugs until you like your mind explodes, like, or your body crack kicks out, or even worse, you act under the feeling of nobility. I work 80 hours a week for my family. Your wife is praising you, honoring you, and you die from a heart attack. Okay, it's noble. But again, I got to refer back to the brilliant quote from Anton Chigurh. If the rule that you followed led you to your heart attack, of what use was the rule? Maybe you start to question things a little bit. Okay? And I would say the phrase go with your gut, while I think schooling and all that will try to quash it, and sometimes your gut is wrong. Sometimes your gut is right, though. Just, I have to feel that institutions, are they serving the individual or are they serving society at large? You have to ask yourself that question. Do you prioritize belonging and conformity, or do you prioritize sovereignty and individual thought? You got to pick a group to align with. I have painfully discovered that I belong strictly in the latter group. I've questioned everything since I was a teenager, everything. And I went from all these, stage 2 was really fast for me. Like my entire teenage years were, for most people it's a rebellious stage, but mine lasted forever. Always anti-establishment, always questioning, always rebelling. My father, if he would to ever redo it, if he was smarter, he would know that if he wanted me to do something, if he wanted me to align with his worldview, if he was clever enough, he would have said the opposite of whatever he wanted me to believe, and I would have believed it. But yeah, he didn't get that far, so he's always telling me like what he wants me to think, and then the opposite action results. But you know, the final stage 3, which is like just basically you can observe both sides and just be okay with both of them and just say, well, it's fine what they think, it's fine what that guy thinks, but I'm gonna think what I think. And that, you know, by adopting this kind of mentality, the haters have no more ammunition. What can they say? First of all, you can't be manipulated. You can't be goaded into a fight. You can't be like, you know, you have no desperation to prove your point. I can log my thoughts here, just for record. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. It doesn't matter what people think to me anymore, because I now own a personal space in which I can be happy and be content with, and it doesn't step on anyone else's toes. It doesn't offend anybody, I hope. And well, if so, I'll have to, like, you know, this is where you have to reconcile, okay? And negotiations start, right? How much do you sacrifice of yourself to keep the peace? So the overall thought here is just, if you can protect your individual values space and reconcile that with the environment, make sure you're not like in a constant cycle of destruction or sacrifice. They're both equally bad. I mean, well, sacrifice being the better one, because no one really cares if you're losing yourself, right? Because if you operate from the, you know, selfish model. But be careful when you sacrifice, I think. I think that's a really good thing, you know. Draw the lines somewhere, and know the lines, and don't let people cross it, and don't invite. And a lot of that has to come with, you don't need other people to be fulfilled. You don't need external validation to be fulfilled. These are very hard things to accomplish. Some of the hardest, and I think it's almost impossible when you're young, because not enough experience in life, probably. And as you get older and older and older, and still brings me back to that quote from Lost in Translation. Bill Murray says, as you get older and older and older, you know what you like, you know what you don't like, you know what you don't stand for. And although you may have let people cross those lines before because validation was more important to you, at some point you might just say, no. You know, I've lived half my life, I've only got half left. If I'm financially able to draw the lines and say, this is the world I want to make for myself, anxiety goes away. I don't know why exactly, but it goes away. It makes sense intuitively, though. Okay, that's it. 20 minutes.